All right, let's dive in on Eldorado. First tee shot here. So using shot pattern, just a couple things. I've got arcs that represent different sizes. You can see that changes as I select different dispersion sizes. I typically go with 60 yards as kind of my window that I'm looking to keep a ball within when I'm hitting a driver. Shorter clubs like long irons and stuff, I might use 50 or 40 yards. Also for shorter hitters, you might be able to hit it into tighter windows because you don't hit it as far. A player that only hits it, say, 200 yards probably could keep the ball within a 40 or 50 yard window, and if you hit it 300 yards, you're probably happy to keep it within a 60 yard window, if that makes sense. So we will be all the yardages here will be off the back tees. That's the ones I play. Obviously, your experience might differ, but hopefully you'll get some information about tips and tricks, where to be, where not to be, what kinds of stuff you can look for when you're out there playing. So starting on Eldorado 1, I think it's a tough tee shot, kind of sneaky tough. It's, I think, one of the tougher ones out here, particularly because it's got this bunker that sometimes for some players can't cover the bunker easily, and even if you can, you gotta bias your aim left, which puts the cart path into play. I think the best strategy here for most golfers most of the time is to hit it as far as you can, and try to hit it in the middle of findable. So if we look at how this works, if I'm hitting my driver, say 300, I hit my driver carries about 300 to 310. I'm looking at a target line somewhere just along the inside edge of the bunker that gives me, center, not a fairway, even though this happens to be the center of the fairway, gives me the center of findable between the native and the native on both sides. So that's what I'm looking to do at that range. If you're playing up a tee box, or maybe if you hit your driver, say 260, your target might be a little farther left, if that makes sense. I don't really see a lot of good reasons to hit less than driver here. If you are long enough to carry the bunker, it's not like the course gets any wider or narrower. It's about 60 yards wide all the way. It doesn't get any wider or narrower. And hitting a shorter club not only guarantees you a longer second shot, but it also, if you are long enough to get over this bunker comfortably with driver, you might not be long enough to get over it with the 3-wood, so it puts the bunker more in play. If you're not long enough to get over the bunker, that's totally fine too. You just have to aim your target a little bit left, expecting still some balls to end up in the bunker, which is, I think, still better in the bunker than like over the cart path. I've been over this area left of the cart path a bunch. Sometimes you lose your ball, even if you find it. There's some trees that block you out. You might not have a very good lie, good swing. You might be chipping it out. And at least with a bunker shot, seeing as how there's no trouble in front of the green, you can hit a bunker shot, and even if you thin it, skull it, chunk it, you're going to be advancing the ball, maybe even getting it to the green, but advancing it down the fairway, no problem. So the bunker is not the worst place to be. So that's what I like to do on the tee shot. As we go to the approach shot view, let's just say we end up somewhere around here, and this green is fairly benign. I'm going to sneak into the frame here some green maps and stuff, just some things to pay attention to. On the green maps, just to be clear here, they're color-coded by severity of slope. Okay, so blues and whites are the flattest parts of the green. The red areas are more severe. This one doesn't have any, but purple is even more severe. Green is like a medium amount of slope. Typically, hole locations will most of the time be located in greens and blues when possible. I'm not saying that always happens, or should always happen even, but that is the norm, if you will. In other words, you're never going to see a hole location on one of the red areas unless there's simply nowhere else to put it, which does actually happen on some holes. Anyway, this green, there's just a big tier that runs across it, generally to the front hole location. I mean, the nice thing about this green is that you can land a shot short and it'll bounce up most of the time. Let's say you're in the rough or you have a long ways in. You don't necessarily have to fly it all the way on the front to get it onto the green. There's really nothing in front to be scared of. Typically, if the flag is in this front area, I'm trying to hit it about pin high. I'm going to bias a little short just because it is so friendly in front. There's a lot of you can putt it from a lot of these places. You can chip it. I might not try to hit it towards the middle of the green. If I'd almost rather be, 2 yards short off the front than like putting it down this tier to a front hole location. So this is one where I might, kind of just try to hit it about pin high and not bias one way or the other for to hit the green, so to speak, which is somewhat common on other holes and other courses especially. But back tier, the big thing to be careful of on the back tier, and this is often the case with almost all golf holes, going over to a back pin is almost always really bad. That's a good thing just to remember. That's good general course strategy. So if the pin is in the back, let's just say it's in the back, it's downwind, and you're in the rough, like it's just a bad idea to try to fly it to a back flag, in the situation like that where even if you successfully land it back here, it might bounce over the back. Typically, if you're over the back of a green, it's either dropping off or it's a downslope, both of which are no bueno. And then you're chipping almost always onto a downslope where the ball is going to be running away from you, as opposed to most of the time, if you're short of a green, chipping onto the green, you're going to be chipping uphill, more often off short grass, fairway grass. You could putt it. So just a good general golf strategy rule of thumb there. As far as the green goes, the back tier, anything that's blue, I kind of like to pay attention to what's blue, because blue is a very subtle slope, and subtle slopes are they can be hard to read in real time. Typically, if you're out playing golf and the ball is on a green slope or a red slope, you'll be able to tell which way it breaks pretty easily. But the blue ones are kind of like subtle. It's hard to tell. So good rules of thumb on the first hole here at Omni on Interlaken is just, in general, if the pin is in the back, the green kind of slopes. It's a little bit concave. It kind of slopes all towards the middle of that back tier and a little bit towards the front. So everything kind of works its way this way. And then on the front of the green, pretty much everything moves in some form or fashion towards the front right corner. So everything some amount goes this way, and it's kind of hard to read a lot of the time. So if you're in doubt, just plan on it gently moving towards the front corner from wherever you're at to the hole. So there we go. Number 1 in the books. Going to number 2. Number 2. Shortest par 3 on the course, but it does have obviously severe water feature and a pretty good sized tier on it. From the back tee, it's not a very long hole, only 140 from the back tee, shorter from everywhere else, of course. It plays downhill 1 yard to 3 yards, depending on the tee box. So not much there. It's often downwind. Obviously, the miss here has to be, at least past the water's edge. So, and the green kind of has the tier that runs kind of at a diagonal across it this way. So general strategy here for hole locations that are below the tier is to try to hit the ball, try to land the ball. I like to try to land it about 5 yards past whatever it is, which might land it on the tier, might land it right next to the hole if you miss it a little short, but might land it on the tier and hopefully it comes back a little bit. But we certainly are better off, even putting from the top tier down to the bottom, we're better off doing that than rinsing one and figuring out where the drop zone is. So to all front hole locations in this particular case, we're definitely biasing a couple extra yards long. Now to the back little area, I typically will try not to fly it all the way there, but I'm trying to kind of fly it to the very beginning of the top tier. It's kind of the target. Now I'm a spinnier guy compared to some of you. If you're not a spinnier player, you might want to land it a little short of that. I think generally speaking, if you're not the spinniest golfer and the ball doesn't land and stop, I think your best target is probably like left half of the green a little bit. Just move this camera just a little bit. There we go. Left half of the green just a little bit, and middle distance. So like right here, almost regardless of hole location. If it lands here and kicks forward or backwards, if you're not hitting a high spinny shot, you're probably not as able to target, specific tiers. And to be fair, this tier is pretty severe, but it's not the worst or most impossible place to putt down from. It's not my favorite by any means, but it could be worse. There's other worse spots on the course. So that's kind of the plan for that one. Next hole. We've got this par 4, kind of a long, nasty par 4. I don't typically hit driver here on number 3. There's a tree on the right-hand side, just short of the native, and from the back tee, it's about 295. My preference for most golfers here is to hit a shot that doesn't go past that tree very often, okay? Once we get past that tree, as I go up into here, this is a 60-yard window. As I go up into here, we start to get to be about 60 yards wide. Let's say you're a long hitter and you can hit it down here. it looks grassy all the way from the native to the cart path, but the reality of the situation is that basically any ball that lands more than a couple steps into this left rough kicks most of the time left across the path and into the hazard, and those are always going to be bad drops, side hill, trees in the way types of things. So even though it looks like it's grass, effectively it plays a little narrower because of the way the slope works. So what you're going to want to do here most of the time is pick a club that doesn't go any farther than this. It might be driver, might be one less. I a lot of times hit 3-wood here. It's downwind a lot of the time. And then favor the right kind of third of the fairway, where if you miss it a little right, your miss would be in the right rough, right side of the fairway, maybe all the way over to the edge of the left rough, but never really putting anything left of the bunkers into play, and not also putting this native up here into play, which leaves us a little farther in. Now, if you're a really straight hitter and you're maybe playing the white tees, you can probably just bust a driver down here because it's wide enough for you. You know, if you're not that accurate with your tee shots like I am, you're probably not going to want to try to bust it down here into this really narrow fairway. As we go up to the green, this green's fairly, I don't want to say, there's not a whole lot going on. There's one little swale on this green right here. One little swale on it. It's not severe enough, in my opinion, to like totally try to avoid it. Basically, the hole locations usually are, there's kind of 3 of them. There's a back center, there's a middle-ish, left-ish, and then there's a couple of ones on the front. So from the where I'm at, I'm just trying to hit it the right distance, roughly biased towards the middle of the green, maybe a middle right. I would say it is easier hitting from over here to all those hole locations versus these bunkers, generally. And then as far as the slope of the green goes, generally it's back to front. The back half biases a little bit towards the water over there on the left. The front half kind of biases the other way towards the right. So if you have a hard time reading those, just know that the front half's going more to the right. The back half generally goes a little more to the left on average. Next hole. All right, I see a lot of errors on this tee shot, I think, strategic errors. A lot of times when I'm playing, I'll be, playing the hole next to it or whatever. I feel like I see a lot of ball searches over here on number 4, which is right of the fairway, which means I think I think a common mistake is that golfers are hitting too much club off the tee here. Okay, it does get fairly narrow once we kind of get past this zone. I'm typically trying to hit whatever club I need to. That's going to leave me in like 125 to 130 range, which is just before the drop off on the right. Typically, if I miss it right, it's going to come up a little short as well. That pretty much takes this first bunker out of play. This bunker on the left is going to be in play. I'll be in there very occasionally. It's not the worst bunker you'll ever be in because, once again, the shot from there is clear, no hazards to cover or anything. So it's not the worst bunker to be in. But I think down the middle, targeting to leave yourself 125 to 130 is the best play here. Hitting it farther up is definitely possible, but I don't think really anybody has that much of a chance to like drive the green. 350 often into the wind. So like if you elect to hit driver up into say here, like you're taking on a lot of risk. We've got to aim it lefter to not hit it into the canyon over here on the right, and now we've got like apartments and stuff right next to our dispersion, which is not good either. It's definitely out of bounds. And no matter even if you hit a good one, you're going to have a wedge of some kind in your hand, which if you are a long enough hitter, for a lot of players, 130 yards is going to be, 9-iron or wedge from here with like almost no risk off the tee. So I don't like taking much risk for very little reward. I'm going to have a wedge in either way. So why risk losing a tee shot when I can just, hit it to about here and never really sweat the tee shot, right? As you get to the approach, this green has a pretty severe, we're getting into the land of severe tiers here, like back to back to back. This one's got a pretty big severe one, bright purple, that comes across the middle left of the green there. 2 basic areas where they'll put a flag. It's either going to be in this back part or the front part. If it's in the front, your target is going to try to land it basically pin high. If you're a normal spinny player, if you're more of a runner-up, or you're definitely trying to land it, a little short of that. What you don't want to do is try to like use the backstop. You don't want to like fly a ball onto this tier on purpose at least, because it's just not that big. It's like 5-6 yards directionally in all directions. And if you miss that, say you miss it long or miss it left, you are in a world of hurt. You're going to have impossible short game shots down this tier to any front hole location. So the backstop or the tier is there if you need it. Let's say you're trying to hit it pin high and you hit it a little long, like it's going to help you out, but it should never be the target. And then to the back right hole location, this is another hole where it's probably best to actually aim away from the center of the green and actually aim for that small little top tier. Accepting that you are going to miss the green sometimes doing that. But most of the chips around the back of the green here aren't too bad. In other words, you're able to, you can probably keep it on the tier at least. It's not like it's gonna get away from you. And the problem with aiming for like the middle of the green, being a little more traditional aim for the center of the green, is that especially if you're a right-handed player, you're never, or I shouldn't say never, you are rarely ever going to hit one that ends up on the correct tier. So if your target is the middle of the green, most right-handed players, their miss is going to be left and long or short and right. It's almost never long and right, because I'm not going to get into why right now, but if you're a right-handed player, you're hardly ever missing it long and right. And so you're basically, if you hit your target, it's coming down the hill, you've got 60, 70 feet up over a mega tier. If you miss it left, you have tough chip. If you miss it short, right, you're in the bunker. So in this case, I'd say aim at the middle of that zone. Your long left miss is much better. You're not dealing with this giant tier. Your short right miss might still be in the bunker, or it just might be on this hill that all catches everything anyway. And your chips are easy, and you're going to hit the green with a reasonable birdie putt of 20 feet or less a lot of the time. So back right, I would say take dead aim. Don't get too conservative on the back right one. On the next hole, this is last year I did a video on toughest holes. I think I named this the toughest par 5, and I think it still is. If it's not, it was in the top couple. But anyway, off the tee, general strategy, you want to favor the right side for sure. Off the tee, favor the right half of the fairway. Anything left of this, basically anything that lands in the left rough, almost without fail, is kicking down over the path and into this hazard where you might find it, you might not, and even if you take a drop, the drop is awful. One of the worst drops on the course, because you're dropping it like right here, and you've got these couple trees right in the way, and you got to hit like a lob wedge just to get over the trees to here, and you're going to have miles in. So left is absolutely cooked on this hole. Missing it right is not great, but it's way better. You got some fairway bunkers that you can choose to lay up out of. You can chip it out of sideways. But most of the time, everything kind of kicks to the left from here. You're going to be somewhere on grass. And if you are a longer hitter, you might even have the opportunity to make a decision about whether to kind of go for the green. And in this case, when I say go for the green, I'm talking kind of like go for the green-ish. Like, it's really hard to get one actually on the green. It's if you hit a good drive, you got like 280 uphill into the wind a lot of the time. Like, you really have to hit 2 good shots to get on the green. But as far as your second shot here, most of the time you should either be pursuing one of 2 options. Option 1 is, if you feel like you can cover, what I'll always do on this hole is I always laser this bunker here, the little pot bunker, the second one. I laser that, and I decide if I can cover that comfortably. Sometimes if I'm in the rough, I might not be able to. If I'm farther back, I might not be able to. But if I'm in the fairway and I'm up towards the edge of the fairway, I might be able to cover that pretty comfortably. And if so, then I'm going to send it. I'm going to send it up here and hope that it ends up somewhere in this kind of short edge front of the green zone, because I expect I can probably get it on the right tier from anywhere around here fairly easily from like 20, 30, 40 yards, as long as I can cover this bunker. I really don't want to be in a 50-yard bunker, so I'm not gonna lay it up to an area that puts me there for sure. If I can't cover that, I'm gonna subtract 30 yards. So let's say that number was 242, and I decide I can't cover it. I'm gonna take 30 yards off of it, which takes me down to 212 or so. And I'm going to hit it to that distance, keeping me short of all those bunkers and just kind of aiming right up the middle of the fairway, leaving myself somewhere in the range of 80, 90 yards where I can still likely hit the right tier. Because that on this particular green, getting it on the right tier is very, very critical. Oh, yeah, you can see this green is, there's not many hole locations. Even the front one, even like the front one is bright red. That means it's like at least a 4% slope. There's a little tier here, and then there's a little area in the back, and everything else is just crazy severe. So the mission on the second shot here, or on the approach shot here, is you want to either get it on the correct tier or one below it, okay? So you never want to be on the one above it, because these are so severe. If you've played here much and you've ever been in the middle tier and the pin's down front, you're probably having a hard time keeping that one even on the green, especially when it gets windy, downwind. It's downhill, downwind. It's hard to keep it on the green. So your general strategy here is get it on the right tier or one below it. So just be careful not to go long on that shot. For most approaches from, say, 100 yards, it plays uphill about 6 yards for what it's worth. And like I said, oftentimes into the wind. Next hole, tough little par 3. Hard to see the green from the tee box. Plays uphill about 5 yards overall. 6 yards from the back, 4 yards from the next one. We'll just say on average plays uphill 5 yards. On this one, this is a little bit interesting depending on where the hole location is. Once again, we've got a big crazy tier on the left and then a couple of mini tiers on the right. Hole locations are generally frontish left, front middle right. Sometimes they'll try to stick when there's like a little tiny little tier that's not really showing up on the greens book. Sometimes they'll stick it there, which is brutal. And then the back. Now, to all of the front ones, we want to imagine that our best shot is going to get there, but not go past. We don't want to be putting from the top tier down to any of these. So our top end is whatever, like if the flag is here, say it's 180, I'm going to hit a shot that's not really very likely going to go much more than 180, plus account for the uphill of 6, so 186. My laser says 180, uphill playing 6, so playing 186. I'm going to hit a shot that, my Sunday best goes like 186. That'll leave me a lot of shots that are, on the green or just off the front, chipping up this relatively easy hill. I'm also going to aim a little bit away from this bunker to the right most of the time, because this area on the right isn't necessarily too bad, but I'm definitely trying to keep it short of all these hole locations. Now, in this case, this is one interesting one where the back hole location, it's actually might be okay to actually hit this one over the green, which is rare in golf, but in this particular case, the back of the green is kind of at a little bowl back there, and the back of it kind of keeps things contained. Everything slopes towards it. So if you flags in the back and you hit it a couple yards over, it's a pretty easy chip, typically uphill, and you're going to make a lot of pars and bogeys from there, versus if you leave it short to that back hole location, you're putting up multiple tiers with crazy little side stuff in it, and that's just tough. So back hole location, I'd recommend pick a club that's going to get there easy and be okay if it goes over, which, like I said, unusual in golf. Next hole, most common mistake here, Eldo 7. Most common mistake here I see, once again, is that idea of hitting it down to the end of the fairway or hitting it all the way down here. I think it gets really narrow. You can see it clear as day from here. The fairway gets narrow, so not only the fairway gets narrow, but just the trouble all pinches in. The trees on the left, there's some native over here between 9 and this fairway. And then anything to the right, kind of that same idea, like the right grass, the hazard starts here, but in reality it starts more like here, because this is such a severe little slope down to the cart path. Anything landing right of that's dead. So I like to be able to bias my tee shots a little bit left, and I like to keep it short of the second bunker as a rule, generally. I like to leave myself somewhere in the range of 120 to 130. It's a wedge in, and the tee shot gets a lot easier. If you're trying to punch it down here, you either will end up a lot of times, in more trouble. You're hitting to a narrower spot, and a lot of this fairway here actually kind of is a pretty severe downslope, which for some players can be actually a bit of a challenge to hit like an 80-yard shot off a severe downslope. So I'd recommend for most golfers, try to hit your tee shot right about to there, just short of that second bunker, leaving yourself around 130. And that puts us in good shape for this really kind of benign-ish green. It's not a lot going on. It's one of the most featureless greens on the course. There's a little swale over here on the right, but not bad. Good rules of thumb here. This one's always a hard one to read. I mean, the front half basically just goes back to front. all back to front. And then the back half has a little bit more break towards the water, just barely. You can kind of see it on there, just a little bit. Nothing crazy. And then there's this little like crown, this little flat spot where kind of things start to break towards the swale. Typically the hole location will be back here, or somewhere around the front. They have a lot of possible hole locations on this one. So, and the green is kind of subtle to read, or it's kind of subtle and hard to read, but generally the big errors you're avoiding here, just be careful to any left hole locations, particularly the back left one, knowing that, you know, a long left miss is dead. I typically will bias just a little bit towards center of green for all the left side hole locations. Other than that, I'm just basically trying to hit it pin high and give myself a good look at, you know, makeable putt. Next hole, number 8. I think this can be driver most of the time, although if your driver gets you down into this zone here where it starts to narrow up with the bunkers, then it's probably one less. This fairway does slope all towards that way, so you tend to, you know, if there's no wind, you can actually get some pretty good distance on this tee shot with no wind, because the landing zone all slopes downhill. Target is generally center to barely left of center. I would say left is slightly better than right, because on the right side, let's say this is our landing area, center. Left, we've got some native, mostly findable though, for the most part, most of the year. Right is cart path, which is always sketchy, and then quickly out of bounds. So I'd rather do I'd rather have a, you know, ball be potentially, you know, doing a ball search over here than for sure over the fence, basically. So I'm always biased just a touch left of center, but not by much. And then from there, we're hitting our approach shot to a green that's got a little bit of like a little crease in it almost. It's like the front is kind of high, the back is kind of high, and the middle is kind of low. So like everything kind of breaks. If you think about it like this, the middle of the green is a low spot. Everything on the back kind of breaks towards the middle. Everything on the front kind of breaks towards the middle, and then the whole middle area kind of tends to move a little bit towards this low spot on the left. So that's kind of once again, I think it's a hard green to read a lot, but take those generalizations into account. Everything kind of breaks towards the middle of the green and towards this little drainage off on the left as a general rule, if you're having trouble reading it. We go to number 9. Finally, downwind. If you've been playing on a windy day, it's like a respite. Like finally I get to send one. This is one of my favorite tee shots, because like, especially if you're playing late in the day, it's like downwind, down sun. You can see it clearly. You can just rip one here. Fairway is downhill. It runs out a mile. You can just probably hit some of your biggest drives of the day on this hole. Generally, the target line is going to be from the tee box. From what you can see, it's going to be like a little bit right side of fairway. It's going to be like just inside the bunker line here. It puts us in the middle, depending on how far you hit it. I think from the tee, it looks like the line is a little more to the left. I think, you know, you're better off just a little right of what you might think from the tee box if you don't play there a lot, or just you know, just over the left side of this bunker is a great line. And then for your second shot, most of the time, I would tell you, if you have the opportunity, I would tell you to go for it if you can. And the rock wall is kind of a unique feature. Keep in mind, the rock wall isn't a hazard. It's only like 6 feet tall. And, you know, even if you were, I don't know, let's just say you were going for it from 250 with your 3-wood, and that's, you know, it takes your Sunday best 3-wood to get there. Like, it's not that many times out of 10 shots where the rock wall is going to actually be a big problem. Like, you might hit one that's a little bit thin and it hits the rock wall and kicks back a few yards and it's totally fine. I mean, it's just not that often where you're going to be like a yard or two from the rock wall and just be really in trouble. So I don't think too much about the rock wall, and I wouldn't recommend you do either, unless your experience tells you otherwise. I just don't see a lot of balls getting hosed by the rock wall. I mean, it can happen, don't get me wrong, but it's just not that big a deal, I don't think, unlike if it was a hazard where balls vanish and stuff like that. As far as the green goes, I typically like to, excuse me, a lot of talking. I could probably drink a little water here. Typically, I'm going for this one in 2, almost every time, unless something goes horribly bad off the tee. And for the most part, if I've got a long club in here, the target's kind of the front right half of the green, almost regardless of where the hole is, unless you start getting into, you know, wedge range or short iron range. Good target's going to be this zone, because our miss pattern long left all works out. Our miss pattern short right's all fairly easy chips. We avoid the bunker and these two bunkers quite a bit if our target is there. Almost like I said, regardless of where the hole location is, unless you're hitting a short club in. And then as far as the green goes, it is pretty severe, almost entirely back to front. The back part has a little bit of bias towards the bunker. The front half is almost straight back to front with a little bit of that same bias. And it's, I would say this one, like, it doesn't necessarily look like it has a tier. Like when you're standing there, it doesn't look like a legitimate tier to me, but it's definitely really severe. It's severe like a tier, but it doesn't look like it has like a stair step to it. So just be like kind of respectful on this green. It's more severe than you might think, just because, like I said, there's not like a super sharp step looking tier in it, but it does have that same characteristic. Typically hole locations are going to be back left and kind of front center for the most part, because those are really the only green areas on there. And that's it for Eldorado. In general, I would say Eldorado is, for me personally, it's the toughest 9 to go low on. There's just not that many, easy birdies on Eldorado. Compared to the other two 9s. The other two 9s have either more reachable par 5s or more drivable par 4s. There's no drivable par 4s, and only one of the par 5s is like guaranteed reachable. Number 5 up the hill is no picnic for getting home in 2. It's definitely not a gimme birdie. So it's really just one easy-ish birdie hole and a bunch of, I think reasonably challenging tee shots. Number 1, number 3, number 5. I think those are all kind of nasty tee shots. Even 8 and 9 aren't gimmies. I would say Eldorado is the hardest one to shoot a low score on, at least for me. And from what I guess probably the most common, I would say that is a common thing that I hear with my students. So a lot of people think Eldorado is the hardest 9. I'm not saying it's harder. It's just there's just not as many easy looks there.